everybody, welcome to today's episode of the SaaS Marketing Show. So today I am joined by Aaron Cort, who is the Director of Marketing over at ClickUp. So if you haven't heard of ClickUp before, you've probably been like hiding under a rock or something like that for the last couple of years. They are the world's fastest growing productivity platform, helping hundreds of thousands of teams around the world save up to 1 day every single week. I think that's one of the kind of pitches on the site too, Aaron. And so today we're going to be talking about how ClickUp have increased organic revenue by over 1,000% year over year with a simple content and SEO strategy. For some context, if anyone doesn't know ClickUp, they reached the kind of glorified unicorn status in December last year after raising around $100 million. Were only founded back in 2017, I think it was. We're huge fans of ClickUp at Hey Digital. It's something that kind of glues our entire business together and can't imagine running without it. So I'm really excited to have you here today, Aaron, and like looking forward to talking about how you and the team have seen this explosive growth. I know there's loads of things that have led to that. Like obviously SEO and content is a big piece of that. But yeah, looking forward to talking with you today. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, excited. Thanks for having me, Dylan.
Yeah, no problem. So I think I did a fairly solid intro, like with ClickUp, but if there's anyone that is maybe like watching this either right now live or listening to the kind of replay a little bit later on, listening on podcasts, wherever, I think probably 90% of SaaS marketers listening to this would have heard of ClickUp because of the growth that you and the team have experienced over the last couple of years. But if people hadn't, like, what else would you add on maybe, or is there anything else that we should share aside from the kind of brief intro that I gave at the beginning?
No, you covered a lot of it, Dylan. I mean, the short take is ClickUp's one place for all your work. There's a lot of productivity platforms out there. ClickUp is the one I would say that is the most robust from a feature standpoint. We're unopinionated, so really every type of team can work within ClickUp and integrate their workflows with each other. It's been game changing for myself. I have a marketing background, obviously, so I played around with a lot of tools on the PM side. And yeah, coming to work here, I've been with the company before we raised any money. About a year and a half total. I've been here so far, and we've seen massive growth since then. So it's been wild, but really a lot of it goes back to the platform because we use it to manage our work as well. So, it's just great to hear and talk to other people using it. And for us, it's been, and myself, game changing for just how we get things done. So it's been cool to see the growth. A lot of new stuff has come out since I've been on the team too, from a product standpoint. So pretty much anything you can think of is pretty much in there. And, with that said, we're always building and iterating every single week. So if you haven't started using it, there's always new stuff coming out. So good things to look forward to. And that goes into the organic stuff we'll talk about today. There's a big buzz around all that. So I can touch on that a little later.
Yeah. And so the one actual question I want to ask you before we like jump into our topic is I was reading, like when I was preparing for this episode, one thing that I started to look at was the careers page or the jobs page on the ClickUp site. And I was looking at like the SEO and content related positions, just because sometimes I find from job ads, I can like learn stuff about guests or how teams are structured and everything else. But one thing that I read in one of the job ads was like, it said up until last year, up until 2020, ClickUp had spent like no money whatsoever on marketing, and everything was purely from organic, that viral growth that happens. That's pretty impressive, right? I think most people will be like, how is that possible given the growth that you and the team have experienced? And so I know we're going to be talking about like content and SEO strategy, but that was something that surprised me when I read that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We really started spending a ton on marketing, or at least a lot more. June 2020 when we raised Series A. Up until that point, it was very small bits, setting up our attribution internally, all that kind of stuff, so that we can properly track things. But from an organic level, it's still the biggest driver of the business, even with the money that we spend on marketing today. So it's continuing to be, the biggest driver, and it's really just the backbone of everything for growth here. So everything we do for paid just stacks on top of it and helps support it. But it's the foundation for the journey, I'd say, for sales enabled, customers that are coming in, for self-serve customers. There's a ton of content that we have out there. So, happy to touch on any of that.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I want to touch on just off what you said, and also I was listening to like another podcast that you did when I was getting ready for this one. And one of the key points that you touched on was like making sure attribution or systems were kind of set up before starting to really go like absolutely wild with growth and spend. Like without, I know it's a like really wide question. I was going to say like, how in depth did you go? Like, what did that process look like to set that up? But because I think like one of the challenges that we see, like we work with my team, we work with around about 15 to 20 SaaS companies, right? At Series A stage, like normally Series A stage or similar. And attribution is like one of the biggest kind of pain points in the world in this space, right? And I know it depends on so many things. Like it depends on even down to the level of how the founder or the CEO or the leadership team think about marketing and attribution and how it works and stuff like that too. But like maybe could you touch on that a little bit, like what your process was like or what you were thinking about when trying to get that foundation set before doing anything else? 'Cause I think that would be useful for some people.
Yeah, I mean, the mindset was just like we need to be able to track everything we spend, right? Because, we were doing incredibly well as a company even before we raised money. So we've always been very cost conscious as a business, and in doing that, when I came on, attribution was the top priority for getting that set up. So being able to properly track every click, every dollar spent, when we get there, and even stuff on the organic level, and where traffic's coming from, what the journey looks like, modeling it out different ways, but really just simplifying it. I mean, we went through a vendor evaluation. That vendor evaluation led us to one of the platforms we use for attribution, which has then migrated into us having our own data warehouse where we're pushing data from a bunch of different sources and creating our own internal models for attribution. So it's been a journey. Where it started was just like what I told you, everyone's bought in on. We can't waste money. We have to be able to track what we spend when we get there, because organic's driving the business today. But, we know to really get, higher levels of awareness and just greater exposure on everyone in our competition is spending a lot on marketing for the most part, at least the big players. So, to compete there, it's something we're going to have to do, but also just for market share and awareness, those are big. We have an incredible product. So we felt great about it at that time. And, it was basically getting prepared to basically go into what would be our Series A, Series B rounds for the 2020 year. So that was the mindset around it. I shared some logistics there, but I'm happy to touch on like attribution models we use or things like that, or tools or whatever it might be.
Yeah, maybe could you share like what the tools were that you were looking at when you first started? I know you said you've like transitioned some internal stuff, but I think
for sure. There's a lot out there. The tools that we really looked at mostly, we started off with an internal system that was mainly just based on UTM tracking, but you lose a lot of clicks when you're just focused on UTMs. So we moved to a platform called Attribution App, which is a great platform. And essentially that became the foundation for us being able to track everything. There was a couple other vendors we evaluated within that instance, but really for what we were looking for, which is a multi-touch attribution solution just to get us off the ground, that was the best place to start. And yeah, the team's great there. So they're, they've been great so far. Nothing bad to say. Great experience with the platform. But eventually what happened is we outgrew what we have there. So we still use their platform, but we have more advanced ways that we're using that data and using their API just to basically translate into business outcomes for us and what our key metrics are. Because it's kind of hard to put in a box whatever your business metrics are. Every SaaS company is different. So that's always like the journey. You'll probably start with, a third party, if not multiple sources that are attributing to where traffic's coming from and everything. But you will eventually have to build your own version of that tracking for the most part. It's really hard. Yeah, like I said, every business is so unique. So it's really hard to find something out the box that will like last you long term, especially if you really want to scale out marketing on the organic level and on the paid level. So those are really it.
That's awesome. Yeah, cool. Thank you for sharing that. I just, it's something that is always asked about. Like, I feel like there is no that like easy solution that will work for everybody, right? But it's like people are always interested in how other companies are doing it. Okay, so let's talk about the increase in organic revenue year over year. Now, I'm sure there's so many things that you and the team are doing that play into this like growth, right? But what's the strategy that we're going to be talking about specifically today?
Yeah, and whenever I talk about our organic growth, I really go back to three things. And we had our first user conference last December, was it? And I talked about these three different types of growth, where we had user-led growth, product-led growth, and then also content-led growth. Content-led growth is what you think of when you think of organic growth, right? You think of content marketing, you think of SEO. It's a huge part of what's going on here, by the way. We've been bought in from that from the beginning. Even before I came on our team, our CEO and our COO, and the small team we had, they did an incredible foundation of setting up, a really solid organic traffic engine with the blog and our website and our landing pages, and we have so much content out there. So that goes without saying. The user-led side of it is our community. We have a really, really tight-knit community of people that love ClickUp and talk about ClickUp. One of the biggest things that's led to that is the fact that we release new features every week, and we've done that for a long time. We've continued to do that, and we will continue to do that for the foreseeable future. And that's allowed us to grow so quickly from a product standpoint, but it's also created a ton of buzz because people aren't used to that in software. You're not used to seeing regular updates and even new features from a company. So that's one of the biggest unique differentiators. That's created a huge buzz. People talking about ClickUp, people recommending ClickUp. Outside of the customer support that we have basically a huge customer support team that, we that's the backbone of the entire business. Outside of the product, really, is just the people that are there to support it. And then naturally, we built sales, marketing, all the other teams around those things. Engine, product are a given, of course, but that has helped create just this viral engine where people are talking about ClickUp, recommending it, and that goes without saying. So that also buckets into what I call organic. And then the product-led growth side of things is the experience people have using the app, which also causes them to invite other people to use the platform, grow their teams on the platform, but also just simply talk about it. It all goes back to tons of word of mouth, tons of people talking about their experience. And that's where it really stems from. And then you stack content marketing and SEO strategies on top of that, and you get a pretty awesome thing that we have that's still rolling here and growing every single month. And like I said, organic does represent the majority of our net new revenue and workspaces every single month, even as we are increasing paid. So that's paid's only stacking on top of that, but those three buckets: user-led growth, content-led growth, product-led growth. That's the ways that I try to explain it just for our situation, for what really buckets into organic for us, which is a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was interested in talking with you about when I first heard about ClickUp, and when me and my team, and when I say team at the time, it was like me and two other people. When we first started using ClickUp, it was a couple of, I'm sure it was at least a couple of years ago, which was still I have to remind myself that ClickUp was only founded 2017, I think, right? Yep. So it's like a really young company still. And I remember kind of feeling like, okay, really interested to see how this pans out, because the product is so strong. And it kind of felt like rooting for the underdog, even like a year or two ago, right? Just knowing how big this, or maybe even how competitive this space is. Like if you'd asked someone 3 years ago which project management tools or productivity tools they're using, most people would probably default to like Trello or Asana, or maybe some others, right? Whereas now ClickUp is from what I see, maybe it's because I'm in the ecosystem too, but even in like all the other agency owner friends that I have specifically, and then other entrepreneurs that I know, it's like ClickUp is quickly becoming, if not already become, the like number one thing that people mention for so many of those reasons that you talked about. And I wanted to know, and I think this would be useful for any of the kind of real early stage SaaS marketers or even founders who might listen to the show, who will say well, it's easy for them because they've raised all this money and everything else, but that's only come recently, right? So people sometimes are like, how am I going to stand out in either a crowded space or an ultra competitive space? Because I know that from a paid ads perspective and just my knowledge of marketing in general, it's probably not the cheapest in the world, and it's pretty competitive from an organic standpoint, I would imagine. So I don't know if people ever ask you that, but if they do, or if they did, what are some of the ways that you kind of built out this engine in such a competitive market? Yeah.
It all starts with the product, Dylan.
Right.
If you're starting off, if you're getting going, I mean, one thing that Zeb, our CEO, and the team really prioritized early on was just building an incredible product and an incredible experience, and frankly, like listening to our users for what they wanted to see, and using just feedback as the engine that drives the product, right? And that's one of the things where yes, we started doing strategic things for content marketing, for SEO, very early on. So even things that we wrote like in 2017 are actually some of our top traffic drivers for blog articles to the website, for example, now. So like things like that, outside of that, really, if you are just getting started, think of your space too. You need to be the expert in your space. One of the things we did talk about at the time when ClickUp was growing early on was competitors and how we compare to them, and just really the vision of the product, and starting to rank though for those keyword terms, and we're ranked for top keyword terms, comparing us to our competitors, and even just for competitor terms, and getting that thought leadership and that digital footprint early from an SEO standpoint has helped us. So like start talking about that soon, and even while you're in the early stages of building your product, and obviously do it in a way of where you're being aligned with what's going on. Not to say misrepresent anything, but though you do want to focus on those types of things, like talk about your space, write content about your space, write content about what people are obviously having high intent that are searching for your product or don't even know that they're searching for your product. Get that footprint in early, and build an incredible product experience. I mean, the combination of those two things is really what helped ClickUp grow early. And we didn't have to raise money. We raised money because we wanted to grow like slightly faster, and it's helped for sure. But with that said, organic, like I said, is still, like, to give a rough number, 70 to 75% of our net new people signing up, and revenue every single month that's coming in, even for sales. So it's still the backbone of the foundation. Paid goes into that for sure at this stage, but it's a supporting mechanism. Without that organic engine and that buzz and that loop of people talking about you. Zeb did a great talk at SaaSer a while back, just talking about the product growth flywheel and this concept that factors in all of this. But it's all the equation. It does stem from an incredible product experience, and then just surrounding materials for people that can simply find out about it early on, and basically just stacking on top of that. But definitely be strategic with SEO and content early, and build an awesome product and listen to people that are using it. And that's the best advice I could give starting off. And it will take time. It's not going to happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. SEO takes time for sure, but if you're consistent, and same thing with building a product. Building an incredible product doesn't happen overnight either. So it's all the same, like, mindset and methodology. It's a level of like very strategic patience, and tactical execution. So the combination of those things and what I talked about, I think, really is what I would tell people, and what I do tell people when they ask me, just from my experience here.
Yeah. I know this is maybe not the most obvious question, or like maybe not, I don't even know if it's a fair question, but like, what would you say to those people that that are leading marketing or working in marketing and growth in a SaaS company, but they know that the product that they have isn't that great? Because like, with all due respect, there's a lot of people out there in that situation, right? Because like,
Sure.
I have this conversation a lot. Like like in my agency and my team, like we turn away more people, like significantly more people than we end up working with. And honestly, like 90% of the time when we say, hey, we're kind of not interested, or don't proceed with things, 90% of the time, honestly, is because I know from like looking at the site, going into the product and everything else, that it's just like not that good, right? And it's like not just that it's not something that me and my team would be excited about promoting, because obviously that's one thing that's really important. But the other thing is, like, you can't, of course you can, there are lots of marketing things that you can do to still market something, even if it's not that great, but it's like, it's never going to have the same level or degree of success. Like, if, I don't know if it's like a fair question or not, but it's something that is on my mind often, because I feel fortunate that like I get to have conversations with companies and marketers like you, like ClickUp, like Drift, ClickFunnels, Ahrefs, like all these great companies. And it's like, it's really great for me and for like my team and the clients that we work with and people in those roles. But I know that like probably 85-90% of people aren't yet in a position where they're working at or able to get into one of these like really, really leading companies. Do you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
it's something that's, I
Yeah.
don't know if you ever think about it, but it's something that I find interesting that most people normally like wouldn't necessarily
Yeah.
talk about, right?
Well, there's two scenarios that you painted. Number one, it's like, are you in the right role? That's a different discussion
Yeah.
working for
Yeah.
the right company. But the second part of the discussion, let's just say ignore that first part, is if marketing and product aren't like directly connected, there's something wrong, right? The product has to be just as like good as the amount of effort you're putting into marketing it.
Yeah.
And you can start to do like certain positioning things, but it doesn't make sense to push extremely hard on paid marketing for maybe a product that doesn't have complete product market fit yet, or adoption. You're just going to be wasting money, or you're going to be creating artificial numbers for what your growth looks like, but you're never going to have that retention. And that's really what it comes down to. So, if y'all don't already have like, and you're not already measuring net retention as a primary stat for whether you should consider certain types of marketing, I would say you should be. And if the marketing person is typically at a small company, doing a lot, they're going to have to focus more on like what would be product marketing in some sense, or even product growth in some companies as you get bigger. Just to understand what's happening there, right? Because the goal there should not be maybe on the external marketing, but maybe it should be on the internal marketing and how you're better empowering your users and people using the product, right? That's where it starts. You can't do anything external like successfully long term until you have that, and that's one of the benefits of. I've worked with a lot of early stage tech companies, even before ClickUp, and when I came into ClickUp, luckily they had that, so that was one of the reasons why I was super excited to join, just with where we were at the time. But I've seen every situation where that's not the case, and if it's not, you got to go focus back on the product, and the marketer should be focused on marketing the experience and helping improve the experience within the product, and focusing on different metrics rather than cost of acquisition, but more like NPS and things like net retention, like I'm talking about, and even DAU wow MAU for daily, weekly active, monthly active users, right? Those kind of numbers are what they should be focusing on to start.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you like internally? Are you at the stage? I think you are, based on what you've just shared and what you've said, and like knowing what's important to you. But when you're looking at performance of whether it's organic, whether it's paid campaigns, like just marketing in general, you're way past the point now of just, and not way past the point, but I'm going to ask, like, were you ever at the point where your focus was purely on like volume of signups and cost per signup, or were you always straight into like these other metrics in the back end? And the reason I ask that is like, we work with a variety of like different SaaS companies, and I see the problem sometimes at this like Series A stage or Series B stage, when a lot of money has been injected in, where companies are focusing purely on, okay, we need to drive as many fucking signups as we possibly can for like we don't necessarily even care about cost. And I know that that's important for other reasons, but I see that a lot of the time they don't focus on those other metrics in the back end. Like, okay, are people actually using the product? Are they converting to paying customers, etc.? Like, were you from the very beginning with different campaigns that you're running, were you always pulling in those other metrics too, or did you also start from a place of like, okay, we just need to drive volume, we need to get people into the product? Like, because
different companies are different. Different companies are different, right? With ClickUp, we always focused on customer acquisition from the get-go. So it was always about, yes, we can get a bunch of people signing up, but are they using the product? Are they converting? That I have run marketing and worked with companies where they did mainly just care about like the number of signups. But different products, different space. One of them being in the like a fintech mobile payments platform. They don't care as much about some of like the cost of acquisition, because it's just a different model. It's more based on like using it, but also repeat purchasing behavior and promotions and stuff like that. As an example, I have tons of other examples I can go into, but for the majority of companies I've worked with, especially from a demand gen side, it is yes about either the signups or the leads generated, and whether or not they're converting, right? Because that's what affects the business. If you're not thinking that way, I think that even though you might have a goal of, the only intention or goal I could think of just driving signups is if you have extremely good product market fit, and you know that those signups will convert to customers or will add something of a business outcome, as a hypothesis, right? Or you have an extremely high LTV, and in that sense, you're like, yeah, we can pay $5,000 for, someone to become a customer or someone just to sign up, right? Because we know that one person. It goes back to these things that I'm telling you, though. It always has to go back to the business outcome, because at the end of the day, we are businesses, so you can't really. Yes, you can definitely monetize having people that use your product, but that it's artificial. And I feel like nowadays, from a venture backing standpoint, I feel like the companies that are we're way past that. I mean, I guess you could argue companies like Clubhouse, for example, that just have like tons and tons of people using their product and have grown like crazy almost overnight, and now have like a wild valuation and have raised a ton of money. I mean, but it's a different play. It's a consumer play, right? And maybe a consumer play, it might be different, right? And it is different. I have worked and run marketing for companies that are more focused on the consumer side. But if you're B2B, you got to start with that from the beginning. The consumer side is a little different, because I guess you could have delayed ways in which you look at a sign up becoming a potential customer, and when, and how you go about that process, right? But you still should be focused on the cost. The cost shouldn't be, you should have a benchmark for why you're paying what you're paying, even from the beginning, even if it's just a hypothesis. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm asking because I think it's really interesting for people listening to this or watching, and for me and many other people. Is like, we often, as marketers within the SaaS space, like, we're so involved in the company that we're working on or working with, that sometimes we don't know what other people are up to, right? And so it's just good to lift the lid and kind of think about or hear about how other people are approaching this and thinking about this too, because I think those kind of questions can help others. We actually have someone, a chap called Mark Walker, who asked a question on LinkedIn. Like, I think he maybe missed some of what we're talking about towards the beginning, but he said, I would love to hear about some of the specific like SEO strategies. So yeah, I know that you talked about kind of early days, like competitor related terms, high intent terms, etc. And
Yeah.
one of the questions I had for you, or assumptions I had, was like, based on the sheer volume of feature releases, I was imagining that would help kind of feed the organic strategies as well. But maybe, is there anything like one or two things that or plays or experiments that you're running as a team right now that you're seeing some good success from, that could maybe help Mark who's watching now?
So Mark asked on SEO Tactics. When I think of that, I think more so like, what search terms are you targeting, and what content are you writing about, and how are you optimizing the website? We have an incredible SEO team here, and that's definitely a big part of it. From a tactical standpoint, we've really stuck to our guns with the types of content we write about. I mean, we focus on high intent terms that are either basically around how to use the product, certain features, what's going on in the marketplace, for the fact there is a lot of competitors, right? And simply writing great content around that, that is strategically written. So we are writing content in a way of where it will be designed to rank, and if it doesn't rank, we are going through a normal process of evaluating the content, internal linking, all that kind of stuff as like secondary pieces after we go live with an initial piece of content, be that a landing page or a blog. But we produce a lot of content. That's also a big thing. We make sure that that's a integral part of our strategy. It has been from the beginning, and it's also just been consistency. But I mean, I could say the strategy is, think of high intent terms that have high traffic and low competition, and that's what everybody does, right? But it's about the consistency of it, and sometimes too the intent, right? That quality of intent. So like we also focus on whether or not a piece of content is converting. For example, we write a blog on OKRs, and that might have way less traffic than a blog on setting goals for the year. But the OKR blog article might bring in higher value people that are signing up for and trying the product. And we were, with our attribution system that we've set up, we're able to see that kind of stuff. So that's also where attribution goes back to the play. Is like, you need to be able, like, you can't just look at Google Analytics and say like, hey, like, we're getting signups and trust that data, because it's you can't audit it. You can't audit it down to the user level. You have to be able to audit it down to the user level to make informed decisions about what to write in terms of content, about what's working, about where to spend money. If it's paid marketing, it all goes back to that attribution model. So, that's the number one thing I suggest focusing on. But until you have that set up, just tactically, it does come down to consistency, but great content, quality content, focusing on like the normal stuff you would if you were to ask anybody that even knows a bit about SEO, which is just the, focus on the intent though, like I said, and make sure you can prove that intent has a business outcome. That's also it. But at the same time too, the other things that we're experimenting with from an SEO standpoint, we get a ton of organic traffic to our website, but we're starting to bucket our retargeting audiences that we use for advertising into like buckets of like people who have visited certain types of experiences, so that we're able to better create a journey for someone whose first touch might be a blog article or a landing page or something of that nature. So that's something we're doing. And then we're also experimenting with a lot of CRO stuff in terms of landing page experimentation and offer experimentation on our blogs, things like that. But still early there. We're building out a solid CRO roadmap as we're building out a formalized growth marketing function, which is in process right now. But that's like small stuff we're starting to do, which is also, it helps with the conversion side of like, yes, someone came to the blog, they might not have converted immediately, but how are you, improving that journey based on the intent? And yeah, if somebody goes to a blog for OKRs, are you retargeting them after, showing them content on how to use your product for OKRs, right? That's like a great example of a really personalized way to do it. But there's a lot of different ways. So that's a couple different ideas and tactics, I hope, that are somewhat helpful.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And did you, like, when you first started, did you have everything from a content SEO perspective, like in order to keep up with that consistency, that volume? Obviously, you probably need a decent amount of people working on that and supporting with that. Was that always has it always been an internal team? Did you ever kind of outsource from the beginning? What did that look like? Because I know that's the question that comes up too, right? In like early stages, like, hey, do we focus on bringing this internally or outsource? And again, I know it depends on like company culture, plans, etc. But would love to hear how you guys manage that.
Our entire team is internal, but we do have an agency that we work with for some of our content. Basically, early on, we worked with one particular agency for basically just writing and having external resources, but that was combined with internal stuff too. So it's always been a combined effort of like partnering with agencies that can act as extensions of the team. Mostly on the blog side, that's the only place we really have, and continue to a little bit. But we have a pretty big internal team, and team structure wise now we have marketing and creative are actually two separate business units. We Melissa, our chief creative officer, came on in October, and we've been building out a huge content machine within ClickUp, and she's been heading that up. So with that said, there's a whole thing going on there where we're expanding that internally. But yeah, leveraging agencies is important. And yeah, just simply it can be efficient from an early stage standpoint, depending on where you are, to have extra bandwidth and help. But obviously you want them to be an extension of your team, and you want them to be agile, because that's also important when you're figuring out what's working early on, even later stages too.
Yeah. I know this is totally like side note and random, but I would be fascinated to see what your like ClickUp setup is like internally at ClickUp. It must be crazy.
Yeah. It's like I've seen crazier. I've seen like some of our customers that are I've heard stories of where they're a digital agency and they have spaces set up for every single one of their clients, and they have like 500 clients, like stuff like that. I'm just like, holy cow, that's intense. For us, I mean, we have different spaces for all our different departments. Things are broken down from there more granularly, but that's mainly how we separate it. And then obviously the folder level and list level hierarchies, all depend and vary on the departments. Use a ton of automations for different instances. That's a big one. We use every bit of our product for everything going on internally. So it's not, I've seen like some crazier stuff though, like from some of our customers that have told me stories and things about what their workspaces look like. So it's cool to hear, but it's not as complex as you might think, but we do just use the product a lot. Everyone uses the product here. So that's a big one. It's fun.
I love that. Okay. One last question from me before we start to wrap up. So outside of what you and the team are working on at ClickUp, are there any, well, not are there, because there will be, like, what other SaaS companies, whether it's companies or even just like specific campaigns, or like where do you go for, like, you personally, where do you go for inspiration or for learnings? Like, what are you watching, listening to, who are you checking out? I'd be really interested.
Yeah, for me personally, I get my inspiration from a lot of sources. SaaStr has great content. If you want to just listen to people that are in different stages and different companies, I've definitely ingested a lot of their content over the years, from marketing folks and just SaaS folks in general. That's one I recommend for that specifically. I mean, outside of that, I like to find things that are applicable from a mindset standpoint to like my day to day. So I read a lot of books. Personally, I listen to books. Podcasts are great. There's great podcasts out there. I always do like podcasts in spurts though. I'll find something that I want to
I'm the same.
I learn like new. I want to learn something new about. So then I go to a podcast first, and then I start just force injecting that, and then I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna start reading some books on this now, and then I just like to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So that's like just me personally, but yeah, a lot of cool stuff out there. But yeah, for SaaS content, SaaSers got great videos. Definitely recommend checking them out. And then yeah, for everything else, I mean, I can recommend hundreds of books for different types of things, but I do like to read. There's a lot of there's a lot of trends, I mean, that are happening in the marketplace nowadays, but you'd be surprised how I think similar mindset wise, even just everything marketing related can be to some stuff that happens like in the finance and stock world. There's a lot of like different ways to look at things from a mindset standpoint, because a lot of the times it's just about like how you handle and deal with money or even think about those things. And even being a SaaS company, it's good to understand that world too, because whether your goal is to eventually get acquired or go public, which are pretty much the only two outcomes, right? Then it's good to understand that world as well, but also just like how people think about all of that. So there's good topics around that are good to understand early, especially if you are an early stage SaaS and you're going to be trying to work with investors at some point and all that kind of fun stuff. It's good to understand just like from a business standpoint how that stuff works, and also even just really specific books on business metrics or how valuations are determined, like stuff like that. It's great. There's great content out there. I could list out resources, but that's just like feeding the imagination for what to look into. There's tons of good stuff out there.
Yeah, I love that. I'm just always interested, right? Because like, for example, with me and my team and I should say, right? It's like when we think, okay, where should we go? Where are we going to look for inspiration? Like if there's a few companies that we would take a look at from an ads perspective or other stuff, like of course, when we're working with our clients, we'll go and look at their competitors and things like that. But there's always a few like SaaS companies that I'll always go to just to see what they're doing and working on. And like one of those is ClickUp, right? Like we love to see what you're doing. So that's why I wanted to ask you. It's like, I wonder who some of those either companies or people are for you, or what you're checking out.
You could ask everyone on our team and they'll have a different answer. And we're doing a ton of stuff on the creative side right now, so they would give you a whole different bucket of answers if you were to talk to them. So everyone's different.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this has been awesome. Thanks for coming on and sharing your thoughts with me and with anyone who watched this live. There'll be a ton of people that will be listening to this over the next week or two on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everywhere else. So yeah, I think we can wrap up now. I really appreciate your time. It was really good to meet you today, Aaron, and talk a bit more and learn a bit more about ClickUp and how you and the team are doing things.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Dylan. Really appreciate it.